I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. You may have seen our video on how to make the Fall Leaves Fall quilt. So this is the pattern from Cozy Quilt Designs. And here's the quilt we made. Really fun autumn leaves scattered down the quilt. Now I had blocks left over. So today I'm going to show you how to take some of the leaf blocks and we're going to make it into a table runner. Here are some of the blocks I have left over. Really nice leaf blocks. So the runner is going to have some blocks and it's going to have some half square triangles. And the half square triangles were created as I made the leaf blocks. So I'm not going to show you completely how to make these blocks because you can watch the other tutorial. But we had a lot of pieces like this where we drew lines and we stitched along those two lines. And this is going to get ironed over, and this piece makes the middle here of the leaf block. But from every piece, we would cut this off. And when you iron this open, you've got a really nice half square triangle. So we got 4 of these half square triangles from every single leaf block. So there's quite a bit of them built up. So I'm going to put the half square triangles all into a really nice border, and that's going to go around my leaves. These are the half square triangles, and I'm going to make what's called a kite tail border. So when these are all stitched together, it's going to look a little bit like a twisty kite tail. And you'll notice I have not trimmed off any of the dog ears, and I'm going to wait and do that at the end because once I stitch them together, these ones can all be done with the blade and we'll only have to snip off a few of them. So I'm just going to sew these in. I'm going to sew this one row here. I'm just going to sew these in order. And it's helpful if you've got your seam allowances going opposite directions. So this one's going down and that one's going up. So all I did was iron a whole bunch of them, half towards the dark and half towards the light. And I'm just kind of picking them up at random so I get a nice scrappy look for the border. So I'm going to finger press all of this one to the right. So I'm just going to keep going here and make a really long border. I've got a couple of small sections of these stitched together so you can see what they look like. So the seam allowances for this part, I want all to be going this way, and the seam allowances here, I want going that way. So I'm just going to press them now so they will behave. So it makes a really nice pieced border. And if you want to flip it over and see if they're all going the correct direction, which they are, that's good, because once in a while when you're ironing these this way, one of these guys will get moved. So I always like to flip it over. See, there's one. It didn't stay exactly where it was supposed to stay. So I am going to iron that back in place because it will make the finished product much flatter. For my runner, I'm going to need to use 20 of these squares to make a really long border, but I wanted to show you how I'm going to trim off the dog ears. So this is a much quicker way of doing it. I've already got them all ironed, and you can just put your blade right here and you can straighten it up and get those cut all in one shot. So it's nice and neat, and then turn it around and get the other ones. There's still going to be a couple things you're going to need to trim with your scissors, but it goes really fast. So on the back here, see that little guy? I'm just going to trim these really quick. And I think this went a lot faster for me than trimming them off all individually. You can do that at the beginning if you like, but now it's nice and neat. We'll get this last one here. So we're going to make this 20 squares long, and we're going to make this one 20 squares long. They're actually made the same way. This is just turned upside down so that we get the peaks and valleys there. Here's the two long borders, and I'm going to stitch them together right down the middle. And it'll be pretty easy because the seam allowances are going in opposite directions. That always makes it easy to match your seams. So we're going to start at the top here, and we're going to match every intersection. But see how this is facing down? The back one is facing up, so it makes it really easy. They'll nest right together. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam. And that way we will go right at the bottom of that point right there. Now if you open it up, you can see what a nice border that makes. So I am going to finger press this to one side. It's kind of thick right here, but that's why it helps if you press those seams to one side and then draw your fingernail down. We will also take it over and steam press it severely to make it stay, but this really helps. So you want to make this whole double border like this, and then make a whole nother one for the other side of the runner. So you're going to need 2 of these. Here's the kite tail border all ironed up. Really a fun way to use up your extra half square triangles. Now we need to put our leaf blocks together. You can follow the pattern for placement, because you can turn your leaves, like maybe you want all your leaves facing the same way. I kind of like it better with them alternating. That's what they've done here, and I think it's pretty nice. So I'm going to use 4 leaves in my runner, and then I'm going to put the nice kite tail border on the edge, and that'll frame it really nicely. The blocks are all sewn together, and I've got the border sewn onto the one side. What's really handy is that 4 of these exactly are the same size as the leaf block. So the math just happened to work out on that. If it hadn't, I would have just continued on with the border, but it is exactly the same. So I can match up these seams here. Makes it a little bit easier to get this on nicely. So we're just going to use the 1/4 inch seam, and you can pin it if you like, but you do have those places right here where these seams are going to match. So I'm just going to hold that, and then I'm going to stitch right along the edge. There's nothing fancy. It's very easy. So just stitch all the way down, and then we will finger press it, and then we will steam press it. Looks very pretty. So we're going to want to finger press the seam that way because we've got all these seams here, so it naturally wants to go that way. So I'm going to finger press this whole thing, then I'm going to take it to the ironing board, give it a nice steam pressing. Here's the runner. We've got the kite tail border on both sides, really finishes it off nicely. But the ends are looking a little unfinished. Since we've got more half square triangles, I just made a little end border, and I was able to continue that pattern all the way around there. For these corners here, I could have used a half square triangle with the color in the corner, but I just had some extra backgrounds from here, so I just cut them down to this size, and I think it turned out really nice. All I have to do now is stitch this onto both ends, and then I'm going to put it on the quilting machine, and I'm going to give it really small quilting. Then we'll put the binding on, and then we'll be done with the runner. I've got the runner top all finished, and I decided to put a 2-inch border around it because I was pretty sure my binding would cover up these points. if I didn't put the border on first. And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted nice crisp points. So now the top is basted around all the edges. The batting's floating, the back is on here, and I've programmed in a pattern. So I'm going to tell it to start, and it'll go over here, and then we'll see what that's going to look like. Perfect. Now I'm going to use a gold thread, and I'm going to use a pretty tight quilting stitch. So we're going to press go, and you'll see what it looks like. So we'll let that finish up. Now I'll get the binding on, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Here's the finished runner. I used the same color binding as I did for the border because I thought it might look too busy if I did a different color binding. I'm really happy with how it turned out, especially considering these were just bonus pieces that I got when I made all the leaves. So this is one that we are going to write up a download for so that you will be able to cut this out from scratch. Now I did a small quilting pattern. These are chestnut swirls, and I used gold thread on the back also because when I'm doing a plainer back like this, I sometimes like the quilting to show a little more prominently, and had I used green it wouldn't have showed at all. And you'll notice how tight the stitch is. When I'm making a table runner, I like it to be really flat. So this might be a little tight for you on a quilt, but it looks really good on the table runner. So this again, it's made with half square triangles, which we got from the scraps here, but I will write it up so you can cut it out from yardage. So over here is the quilt. And these are just the extra pieces from the quilt. The quilt turned out really nice. Table runner turned out really nice. So the pattern is called Fall Leaves Fall. The table runner is about 20 by 55, and this particular design would work with any 9-inch block in here. So we will be making more of these runners because I just love how that is bordering all of the patchwork there. Thanks for watching our tutorial today, and be sure to give us your requests for which patterns you would like us to see make up next.